Hello there, fellow truth seekers. This is Doug coming to you once again on this here Shabbat. And just wanted to say a few things before I actually start. One is, of course, Satan has been trying to discourage me. I didn't really have a whole lot of views on my last video, and I think that it's probably Satan's doing. It's probably YouTube throttling my channel, or and it could be that just nobody wants to hear it. And I don't know. I mean, it may be, but and he put it. Satan tried to put it in my, just quit, give up. Don't, do something else. And of course, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep doing it if only one person watches. Because I think that it's more important now than ever to get the truth out. And of course, I don't know everything. I don't, I'll be the first to admit there's things that I'm still working and grappling with myself as far as in Scripture. And, the Father reveals it to you whenever He feels like you're ready for it, or when it's pertinent, when it's something that He wants you to reveal or to discuss or whatever. But one of the brothers that watches my channel, Hitless Gaming, me and him actually talk on the phone some, and because I don't really have anybody here where I'm at, and he's kind of in the same position. I mean, there's really very few people that believe the way that we do. I mean, I talk to preachers, I talk to people that go to church and all that stuff, and I tell them, well, I took Sabbath off. He says, "Oh, you take Sunday off?" I said, "No, Sunday's not the Sabbath. It's not. No," I said, "It's the day of the sun god, the venerable day of the sun, S-U-N, sun. I mean, that's why it's called Sunday, because it's the sun god worship." That's just how ignorant people are about it, And so, but my brother, we were talking, and he kind of pointed something out, and I understand that, that I believe it too, that he said that people are committing idolatry by worshiping Christ, and they are, because if you look over and over again, and I'm going to bring the Scriptures to bear on this, because Christ came for one purpose: to reveal the Father to us, to teach us how to be obedient to Him and to do His will. And over and again, He made it clear that we are to worship Elohim, Yahuwah Elohim. He never once told us to worship Him. And so, but people have, they put up these images that they believe He looks like, and we don't know what He looked like. We have no idea. Personally, I believe He looked something like the people there in Iraq, the northern part of Iraq, in that general area there, eastern Turkey, because that's where Abraham come from. And so I would think that those folks, probably the Hebrew people, probably look something like that, and there's probably variation, just like in all races and all. There was probably variations in the way people looked, and depending on what part of the where they lived at and stuff, over time, our melanin can change in our skin and stuff like that. But and like the house of Israel, they've been scattered out, so they've intermixed in with other races and other peoples, other nationalities and stuff, and so they look probably nothing like they did originally. which is a moot point. But I'm just saying that, we really don't know what the Messiah, Mashiach looked like. And so these images and all, that's forms of idolatry. These crosses and all that stuff, that's all forms of idolatry. And so I want to show where, of course, I'm going to begin by going back here to Exodus. I'm going to look at Exodus chapter 20 to begin with, because this is where we have to go, and this is Exodus chapter 20, verses 1 through 3. And Elohim spake all these words, saying, I am Yahuwah thy Elohim, which hath brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. And that's little L, Elohims. And it says, and on down here it says, thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them, for I, Yahuwah thy Elohim, am a jealous God, or Elohim, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon. So, and then of course this is where he's given the 10 Commandments to Moses. All right, and then I'm gonna look here at Exodus chapter 34, verse 14. For thou shalt worship no other God, little g, for Yahuwah, whose name is jealous, is a jealous Elohim. Okay, so he's not going to give his glory to anyone, and he's not going to tolerate worship of any other gods. All right, now we're going to go here to Matthew. I'm going to look at Matthew 4. Matthew 4 and verse 10. And now this is when Satan had come to Mashiach when he was out in the wilderness fasting. And this is the last temptation that he put on him. He says, I'll give you all the, shows him all the kingdoms of the world, and I'll give them all to you if you'll just bow down and worship me. And then Yahushua said unto him, Get thee hence, Satan, for it is written, Thou shalt worship Yahuwah thy Elohim, and him only shalt thou worship. Him only. But what you have to understand is that Yahushua is a part of Elohim. But the Father is the head. And the Father is who we worship. Even though Mashiach, Messiah, Christ, it means anointed. The anointed. Is a part of Elohim. Just like the Ruach HaKodesh, or Holy Spirit, is a part of Elohim. But when it says, the Lord your God, or Yahuwah Elohim, it says, you shall worship him only. That's talking about the Father. So, and when we look here, and of course, this is Mashiach, Yahushua telling this. Okay, he's not saying worship me. He's saying worship the Father, worship Elohim. It says he says worship Yahuwah Elohim. Okay, and now I'm going to look here at Matthew 15. Matthew 15, 1 through 9. Now, This is when Christ and his disciples were up at Samaria, and they had stopped there at the well. I believe that's where this is at. Yeah, this is where he's gone up there to there at Samaria, and he's stopped there at the well, and of course it says, this is chapter 15, beginning at verse 1. Then came to Jesus scribes and Pharisees, which were of Jerusalem, saying, Why did thy disciples transgress the tradition of the elders? For they wash not their hands when they eat the bread. But he answered and said unto them, Why do ye also transgress the commandment of Elohim by your tradition? For Elohim commanded, saying, Honor thy father and mother, and he that curseth father and mother, it is a gift, but by whatsoever thou mightest be profited by me. And honor not his father and mother, he shall be free. Thus have ye made the commandment of Elohim of none effect by your tradition. Ye hypocrites, well did Esaias prophesy you, saying this, People draweth nigh unto me with their mouth, and honoreth me with their lips, but their heart is far from me, but in vain do they worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. And that's what's going on in these churches. They're teaching the traditions and the doctrines of men. And so they've venerated Christ to almost to an elevation of worshiping him, rather than worshiping Elohim, Yahuwah Elohim. And so, you know, and of course the first commandment, thou shalt have no other Elohims before him. That includes Christ. I mean, if you're worshiping something other than Yahuwah Elohim, then you're putting something else before him. And that you know, and Christ didn't come down here for that purpose, to be worshipped. He come down here to reveal the Father to us, and to teach us and show us how to be obedient. You know, and I'm going to show you some other scriptures regarding that as well, where we have been led to believe that, you know, when and I'll talk about it when I get there. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but as you can see, all the churches, and I talked about that last week as well, about the deception of it, you know, that teaching for doctrine, the traditions of men and the doctrines of men, rather than teaching this word here, and bringing people to the pit through their own traditions and you know, and of course you know, and of course this leads into the I think the woman at the well and all that stuff, where, you know, these people like that woman there at the well, she was more aware than a lot of them was. I mean, you know, and because she was a Canaanite woman or Samaritan, you know, I mean, and a lot of those people that didn't really know, they worshiped what they didn't know, but yet their hearts was really, you know, they were really seeking the true Elohim. Even, you know, when you had these Pharisees and scribes who had it, they had this truth, and yet they, you know, they didn't. They were teaching their own stuff, their own doctrines, and their own traditions, and all that kind of stuff, rather than teaching the truth that they had already been given. And I'm also going to look here at Matthew chapter 11, and verse 27. It says, all things are delivered unto me of my Father. And no man knoweth the Son, but the Father. Neither knoweth any man the Father, save the Son, and he to whomsoever the Son will reveal him. Again, he come to reveal the Father to us. Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. And Christ, he come as a, and this is in the chapter 12, verse 18, verse 17 and 18. That it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by Esaias, or Elijah, the prophet, saying, Behold, my servant, whom I have, behold, my servant whom I have chosen, my beloved, in whom my soul is well pleased. I will put my spirit upon him, and he shall show judgment to the Gentiles. His servant. Christ took on the role of a servant, not as a God or as a king or anything else. He was a servant. And so, and I think Esaias, I think that's Isaiah, not Elijah. Excuse me. So he came to take on the role of servant, and and he showed that over and again, like washing his disciples' feet and stuff like that. Showing us how. And he told he said, the one among you who would be the leader of you, among you, let him be your servant. Rather than, wanting to, put yourself up to some high position, and of course you see that, with all these titles and, Paul, when he began to go around and establish churches, and the ecclesia began to build, into the tens of thousands. It became overwhelming for the disciples. They were just, they could not, a single man could not deal with all these people. And there was some, like among the Gentiles, that were complaining, that they were not getting equal treatment, compared to the Jewish people or whatever, as far as like helping the poor and the elderly and stuff like that. And so Paul had to come up with some type of a hierarchy of responsibilities, so he created elders and bishops and stuff. But they were not to be, like the Nicolaitans, where they lord over you and they put themselves up on this high pedestal. And no, they were supposed to be servants. Because let him that would be the leader or the be over people, let him be your servant. And that's the kind of attitude that Christ had, as of a servant. And so that's the kind of role, and the way that we have to look at our lives too. We have to be servants, and we have to look at Christ as that's what he came to be, was a servant and a propitiation, or a ransom for us. And that we remember that, and do like he told us, to worship Yahuwah Elohim, like he told Satan. Now I'm going to look here at Mark, and of course a lot of these, let's see, what did I have here? Matthew 15. There's something I had here too, and I forgot to write it down. Matthew 15, 1 through 9. I read the wrong place back there, but that was okay too. This is what I just read, Matthew 15. I had some of these. All right, Mark 7:7. And this is kind of the same thing, just another reiteration of it, but okay. Yeah, it's the same thing that I just read there in Matthew 15. Well hath Isaiah prophesied of you hypocrites, as is written, this people honoreth me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. Howbeit in vain do they worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. For laying aside the commandment of Elohim, you hold the tradition of men, as the washing of pots and cups, and many other such like things you do. And he said of them, full well ye reject the commandment of Elohim, that ye may keep your own traditions. For Moses said, and I read that a while ago, but they reject the commandment of Elohim, and of course the first commandment is, you shall not have any other Elohims before me, and that's the gist of what the Messiah is trying to get across to us here. And now I'm going to look here at Luke. And of course he says the same thing here in Luke 4. Get thee behind me, Satan, for it is written, thou shalt worship Yahuwah thy Elohim, and him only shalt thou serve. And of course this is Christ, this is the red letter words here. This is Mashiach saying this itself. And then I'm going to look here at Luke chapter 10, verse 22. And this is Christ telling us here. He says, all things are delivered to me of my Father, and no man knoweth who the Son is but the Father, and who the Father is but the Son, and he to whom the Son will reveal him. And he turned unto his disciples, and he said privately, and this I'm reading Luke 10, 22 through 27. For I tell you that many prophets and kings have desired to see those things which ye see, and have not seen them, and to hear those things which ye hear, and have not heard them. And behold, a certain lawyer stood up and tempted him, saying, Master, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? He said unto him, what is written in the law? How readest thou? And he answering said, Thou shalt love Yahuwah thy Elohim with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy strength, and with all thy mind, and thy neighbor as thyself. And he said unto him, Thou hast answered right. This do, and thou shalt live. And of course then he goes on to tell the parable of the Good Samaritan, about who is your neighbor. Okay, and which is anybody. Your neighbor is your fellow human. Your fellow humans is your neighbor. I mean, if somebody's in need and you see them in need, and you don't do nothing for them, then you're denying God. You're denying Elohim. It's a form of denial. And then I'm going to look here in the Gospel of John. And of course, this is the book on the deity of Christ. But one of the things here that I'm going to look at, and of course, is John 3:16. And what it says about Yahushua. It says, of course, everybody should know this. I mean, this is Bible 101. For Elohim so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Yahid, or son. And that word, Yahid, is special heir. Just like with Abraham and Isaac. Isaac was not his only begotten son. But he says that in there. He says, but the word that he's using there is Yahid, his special heir. Because Isaac was not his only begotten son. He had Ishmael, and I think he had other children with, I can't think of her name, but after that. So, he had other sons, but Isaac was his special heir. And the same with Messiah. He's the special heir. Because he's got, the father has other sons. When you read there in Job, it says the sons of Elohim came before him, and Satan also. So there's other sons of God, but this is his special heir, his only begotten son, his only begotten Yahid, special heir. It says, for Elohim sent not his son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. He that believeth on him is not condemned, but he that believeth not is condemned already, because he hath not believed the name of the only begotten Yahid of Elohim, or son of Elohim. And this is the condemnation, that the light is come into the world, and men love darkness rather than light, because their deeds were evil. For everyone that doeth evil hath the light, hateth the light, neither cometh to the light, lest his deeds should be reproved. But he that doeth right, doeth truth, cometh to the light, that his deeds may be made manifest, that they are wrought in Elohim. Now, one of the things I want to point out here is that, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. And people say, well, I believe. So I'm going to be saved. But the devil, believes and trembles. But you got to go on down here. That's why you can't just take one verse and make a doctrine out of it. You got to look at the context, and you got to look at the scriptures around what it's saying. But he that doeth truth cometh to the light, that his deeds may be made manifest, that they are wrought in Elohim. And that's where James comes in, saying, because I cannot see your belief. You can't see my belief. So we manifest our deeds out into the light so that they may be seen. And because if you believe, because Christ said, it's not everyone who says, Lord, Lord, who shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but those who do the will of the Father. And of course, Christ led the example of how you do that. How you do the way he says, I always do those things which please the Father. And, the Father, on a couple of different occasions, spoke, and they heard him. This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Hear him. Because he was revealing the Father to us. And, so that's, that's the point about he's Christ is the propitiation. He's the example. He is, he's the one that we have to look to for the example of how to worship the Father and how to please him and to be obedient to him. Because there's nowhere in here that I've seen that says we are to worship Christ, to worship the Mashiach, Yahushua HaMashiach. We're not, there's nothing that says we're supposed to worship him. We're supposed to worship the Father in spirit and in truth. Now I'm going to look at John 4:21 through 24. And this is the part about the Samaritan woman Um, she says, our fathers worshipped in this mountain, and ye say that in Jerusalem is the place where men ought to worship. And Yahushua said unto her, Woman, believe me, the hour cometh when ye shall neither in this mountain or yet at Jerusalem worship the Father. Ye worship ye know not what. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews. But the hour cometh, and now is, when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For the Father seeketh such to worship him. Elohim is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. It really is about truth. That's why, the name of my channel is Douglas Foster Truth Seeker. Because I seek his truth. And, and that's the ultimately that's what Christ is telling us is, if that he seeks those who, in spirit and that want to worship him in spirit and in truth. Just because you believe doesn't mean you're worshiping him in spirit and in truth. Because if you're putting other things before him, that's a violation of his commandments. The thing he was telling them Pharisees back there. That they were putting their doctrines and their traditions ahead of him. Which is a form of idolatry. And let's see here. And this is what we have to understand too. This is in John 3:31 and 36. And if we understand too, I pointed this out, the first chapter of John, the Gospel of John, where it talks about the Word of Elohim becoming flesh and dwelling among us, even as the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. Full of truth. And that he come down but here it says in 3:31, he that cometh from above is above all. He that is of the earth is earthly, and speaketh of the earth. He that cometh from heaven is above all. And what he hath seen and heard, that he testifieth, and no man receiveth his testimony. He that hath received his testimony hath set to his seal that Elohim is true. For he whom Elohim hath sent speaketh the words of Elohim, for Elohim giveth not the Spirit by measure unto him. He was full of the Spirit, not by measure. The Father loveth the Son, and hath given all things into his hand. He that believeth on the Son hath everlasting life, and he that believeth not the Son shall not see life, but the wrath of Elohim abideth on him. And he that believeth on the Son hath life, because he believes what he said. He's saying, he testifieth, the Mashiach, the Messiah, he testifieth of what the Father told him and what he saw the Father do and what he heard him say. He's testifying. That's what he come here to do, to testify of it. As a witness. Okay? And he that received his testimony, in other words, received the words that he spoke, and that do them, be ye not just hearers of the word, but doers. So He was sent, a servant of the Most High, to reveal the Most High to us and to teach us how we are to worship the Most High in spirit and in truth. And nothing else. We're not to worship anything else. And of course, if you're putting the Messiah up there and you're worshiping him, then you are going against his teaching. Because he never taught anyone to do that. I mean, you know, when they called him good master, he said, why do you call me good? There is none good but our Father which is in heaven. I mean, so I'm glad that my brother brought, you know, this kind of got me to thinking about this, because he was right that in the churches and all, it's, you know, it's become a form of idolatry, the way that they are putting Messiah up as God, as being a God. And, you know, he never indicated to us anywhere, and none of the apostles did either. Yes, we are to revere him because of what he did for us. Because he was willing to sacrifice himself for us as a ransom for many. But he also came to teach us, you know, like this Samaritan woman, you know not what you worship. You know, and we, the Jews, we know what we worship. For salvation is of the Jews. But the hour cometh when, and now is, when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth, for the Father seeketh such to worship him. The Father seeketh such to worship him. Elohim is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. It doesn't matter where you're at. So he's saying, you know, you don't have to go to Jerusalem over there to the temple and worship him. Because he's everywhere. That was a type. And over and again it tells us this here. This is the temple. This body. I mean, Paul says that, do you know not that you are a temple? And if you defile it, you will be destroyed. And so we can worship him wherever we are. Like the Samaritan woman there, you know, she was worshiping, they worshiped there in them mountains. And he said, you know not what you worship. They were worshiping idols or whatever, you know, they didn't know what they were worshiping. Worshiping false gods or whatever. You know, and the Hebrew people, they knew who they were worshiping, but they were worshiping wrongly, because they had brought in all of these traditions and their own doctrines, and they got away from the doctrine, you know, the commandments, and of course they kept the feast, but you know, they began to look at it as drudgery, not as something to be thankful for and to be, you know, joyful. And of course there was some feasts that were solemn feasts where you were supposed to be, remember, you know, they were supposed to remember, you know, how they had been in bondage and how they, you know, were persecuted, you know, were being oppressed, and how they were delivered out of it. You know, but the way they began to do it on it, God, you know, they said, I hate your solemn feast. I hate these things. Even though those feasts are his. I mean, if you read there in Leviticus 23 about the feast, they are his feast. They're not the Hebrews' feast. They're not the Jews' feast. They are his. And that's why I believe, you know, we're supposed to keep them. And I'm still learning about that stuff, because I'm getting old, you know, I'm kind of old, and there's a lot of that stuff, you know, that was never taught. Matter of fact, they didn't read a whole lot out of it, even didn't read a whole lot out of the Tanakh, the Old Testament. They didn't. You know, again, occasionally, they'd read something, like from Ruth or Esther or the story of Daniel in the lion's den, or Meshach and Shadrach and Abednego being thrown in the fiery furnace, and one likened to the Son of Man in there also. They would read that kind of stuff. But really they didn't, read a whole lot from the Torah. They'd read some of the prophetic books, and they'd read from, the Chronicles and the Kings and stuff like that, but they really just didn't study that. And, the Levitical feast, because they had convinced themselves that we were not under that, and they were teaching that, dispensationalism. They're teaching that, that we're not under that system anymore, and the law don't apply to us and all that stuff. But the Messiah makes it clear that it does. I mean, there where he confronted them Pharisees, what is the greatest, what does the law say? What is the, and they said, well, love the Lord thy God with all thy mind, soul, heart, and strength. And the second one is likened, is likened to that, love your neighbor as yourself. That's he's making it clear. I mean, over and over again, he's making it clear that stuff is not done away with. Yeah, the Levitical priesthood and those, those statutes and laws that were that govern the sacrificing of animals and stuff. Yeah, that's done away with. But they never taught that, and so the stuff to do with the feast and all that, and my friend there, he made it. It was showing me some stuff. That he's learned. And see, I'm not above learning, from others. I mean, if I can learn something from regarding the feast and stuff, one of my biggest problems is, and of course he said something about that, too, is time. We have, and I mean, we have a couple businesses and they're struggling, and we got all these animals and stuff, and family stuff. I mean, there's not enough hours in a day sometimes, to do stuff, but I always, I do make time every day to study, scripture. But sometimes I just don't have the time to do an in-depth study that I'd like to, the time to sit down and get out my concordance and go online and dig up some stuff, some research and stuff. Because the other thing is that, when it talks about that the lawless one and, seeks to change the times and the traditions and the laws and of course, I've seen somebody here recently, and they're saying that the United States is Babylon the Great. I believe there's more than, and I've talked about that before too, about more than one Babylon, because it talks about Israel being Sodom and Gomorrah and Babylon, it talks about it being Babylon, and then Rome. Same thing. I think that the Babylonian system is made up of more than just one actual city. Some people even said, Babylon over there in Iraq, that's going to be that great city and all that stuff. No, I mean, they have restored a lot of it, just for historical reasons or whatever. But no, I think that, I've talked about the pyramid that you see on top of the dollar bill. Each of the points on that capstone represent, and I know I'm getting kind of away from what I'm talking about, but I'm just kind of trying to make a point here about why it's important to study, and I try to study is because people say, oh, well, yeah, I mean, I believe that great city, one of the great cities it's talking about is New York. I mean, it's obvious it is. And it will be destroyed. But I also believe that the city on 7 hills, which is Rome, is going to get it too. Because if you look at that pyramid capstone, there's 3 points on there. There's 3 city-states in the world. There's only 3. Washington, D.C., it's going to get it too. Rome, the Vatican, and the city of London, which is a 1 mile square area inside of Greater London. That is a city-state. And just like Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia, it is not a part of the United States. It's a city-state. It's a city or territory or whatever unto itself. And the reason they established it that way, at least the traditional reason is that it was so that no state could claim the capital. So they made it its own city-state. And so I believe that they, and that Washington is the military, industrial, part of the Babylonian system. Rome is the religious part, and London, city of London, is the business, or the global business banking stuff. Because that's where the Bank of England, which is ran by the International Bank of Settlements, it's not owned by the British or the country of England. It's controlled by the banking cartel. So that's sort of their home base, central bank. But the idea that this is where a study comes in, is that you can see, it even names these different places as being Babylon, like Babylon. Rome says, Rome is like Babylon. And in Revelation, it says it's a city on 7 hills. The 7 heads or 7 hills on which the woman sits. And if you notice, the woman is riding on this beast system, which is this military, industrial, political system. So you got more than one thing involved there, and that's where, and the point I'm trying to make about that is about the feast, studying on that, learning, because again, and we talked about that, some of the feast, or you have to go to Jerusalem to take part in them, or you're supposed to, because you can read, where Paul, when he was in his travels, his missionary travels, he would say, look, I've got to get back to Jerusalem for the feast. And again, they kept them. Paul was going there because he, and it's because he was a Jew, Well, no, it wasn't because if it was done away with and he was a Christian now, why would he still be going and doing it? Because they're not the Jews' feast, they're not the Hebrews' feast, they are the Lord's feast, or Yahuwah's feast. They're his feast. And so I gotta get, and I gotta get me some kind of a calendar set up, because it changes. And our calendar is messed up worse than a soup sandwich. The Gregorian calendar is really, the Greco-Roman calendar, whatever you want to call it, but is really messed up worse than a soup sandwich, or Chinese water clock, as they say. Because, look at it. Look at how it, 30 days, 31 days, 21, 28 days, 29 days. It just is all over the place. And I know that they set it up to accommodate their pagan festivals, pagan feasts, and to do away with the feast of Yahuwah. And then the Hallel calendar of the Hebrews, they changed theirs too. So and of course I know, I listened to this guy, Ken Johnson, he's a scholar, and he has his own channel on there. And he does a lot of studying of the Dead Sea Scrolls and stuff, and the Zadok calendar that they found there. Because the Zadok priest, that was one of the things that they were in charge of, was keeping the calendars and the Torah, and keeping up with all the documents and books and stuff that they had. And when they left there around the time of Antiochus, they, whenever a lot of the priesthood began to just bow down to Antiochus, and were eating pork and bowing down to Zeus or whatever, and we're going along with the Seleucid people, the Greeks. They left. They left and went to Qumran. That's where they went. They went out into the wilderness to get away from them, and they took a lot of that stuff with them, and the calendar and all, and the Matzeroth. And so, maybe you could go by the constellations or something and the phases of the moon and stuff like that to determine when it really is. Because there is things that tell you in there, how you can kind of, how the moon plays a part in it, as to determine when the first of the year is and stuff like that. I'd like to get more in depth in it, but again, I'm so busy all the time, or shackled down at a store, and watching it, or at another, we got another place store, and I'm at one or the other, and then having to maintain places as far as like weed eating and grass cutting and typical stuff that everybody has to do. But if I was working for somebody, a 9 to 5 or 8-hour day, then but my days are 14, 15 hours a day, so it's hard to get it in. But I, like I say, I do, always read the scriptures every day and pray and stuff like that. I mean, I'm not gonna, no matter, the job can wait, business can wait. I'm gonna do those things. Anyway, but as far as being able to really get in and do some deep studying like I'd like to, sometimes it's hard to do. And so I listen to other people, and I listen to, like, my friend there, my brother. I mean, I won't reveal his name, but he goes by the handle Hitless Gaming, and he's a beloved brother. And because he's like me, he doesn't really have anybody to maybe have like a Bible study or something, where we can all kind of sit down and come to a consensus, because the scripture says, where two or more are gathered in my name, there I am in the midst. So, when you have a gathering together of brothers, ecclesia together, and that includes sisters. I'm not counting y'all out either. Y'all are daughters of the Most High, and that we can't learn from each other, and maybe the Father reveals something to you that He didn't reveal to me. That's why, we need fellowship. But it's, I've tried to find somebody that, believes the way that I do, and understands the scriptures the way that I've come to understand them, to try to have a fellowship, but I haven't found any. And it's really kind of sad, I mean, sometimes it's disheartening. That Satan has, and like I said last week in that episode about deception, where it says there in Revelation 12, he deceives the whole world. I believe it. I don't want to believe it, but if the scripture says it, the Father says it, then we have to believe it. And, and like I say, I try to talk to people, I try to talk to people that say they're believers, they're Christians, or of the way. But and it's funny how there's so many of them that are really, doing a lot to discredit evolution and stuff like that. The mainstream science, the atheistic, Darwinist. But when it comes to heliocentric cosmology, they'll believe them. They'll believe these deceivers. I don't. It would seem to me that if mainstream science is made up of atheistic Darwinists primarily, how would you be willing? Why would you be willing to believe? Not believe some stuff, but believe other stuff that they tell you. I wouldn't believe anything they say. I mean, there are those that have been converted that are believers because of the biology that they've seen, but yet they still buy into a lot of the lies. The heliocentric cosmology and the globe and all that kind of stuff. And of course, I see where these people online, they're coming out saying that flat Earth is dumb and dangerous. They're trying to they're starting to push their narrative that anybody that believes that way is dangerous, a threat. And of course, these people too, they always put out, we're for the Constitution, the right to free speech and the right to assemble and all these other rights, and until they don't like it, till they don't like what you have to say, or then they begin to demonize you. And your thinking's dangerous. Well, unless you have discussion, and I mean, we're not animals. Father made us above the animals. He made it, and he says, when it comes to our relationship to Him, He says, "Come, let us reason together." We were created with the ability to reason. So He says, "Come, let us reason together." And and He wants us. I think He says these things to try to get us to think about it. I'm telling you, you come and reason with me as an example of, okay, if you can sit down and reason with me, why shouldn't you be able to sit down and reason with your fellow human? That we need to learn to reason together. And of course, this is the curse of the tree of good and evil, is you're going to have the conflict between the good and the evil. I mean, that's the whole of it is that the whole world now has been opened up to good and evil, and then we have to make our choice as to which of the two that we're going to side up with. And we come to the realization of good and truth by reason. And because we're reasoning beings. And of course, if you listen to the dogma of a lot of these people on the side of science falsely so called, they're dogmatic about it, like a religion. it's become a religion. The religion of scientism. And they're not willing. It's like I said last week, how they'll give credit to some outside aliens for creating us or seeding this planet or something, but they will not give the credit to the one who really created us. And they're dogmatic about it. People like Richard Dawkins and different ones like that, and Neil deGrasse Tyson and Michio Kaku and Bill Nye the Science Guy, and on and on and on at these people. And because the evolutionary model is on its last legs. It just doesn't hold up. And so, especially with biology today, I mean, them being able to look inside of cells and see all the wondrous things that are in there, it really kind of nailed a coffin in Darwinism. But they want to try to find another, they still want to try and say, well, yeah, that's possible that there could have been some other life out there. And I can't think of the guy's name. He was on Ferris Bueller. I remember that. He was on Ferris Bueller, and he's got this deadpan way of talking and all, just Ferris Bueller. I think he was like the principal or something on there. Well, that guy was interviewing Richard Dawkins, and he was like, oh, so you're willing to accept this other possible reason for any other reason or theory for the for man being here, other than, you'll accept any other reason other than God or Elohim. And so the all this the stuff, I mean, to where and that's why Christ come, to try and emphasize on us about worshiping the true Elohim, Yahuwah Elohim, and as where though these people and this system and the God of this world want you to worship anything but Him. And that's why this final religious system is a combine. It's just, it's going to have all these different religions in there. And because they, as long as you're worshiping something other than the true Elohim, that's okay. Because that's all Satan's, out to do anyway, is just, he wants to worship himself, but more than anything, he just wants to take our worship away from the true Elohim. And, that's like with Rome, They didn't care what you worshiped. They really did not care one bit. But they had their official god or whatever, and one day a month you were supposed to burn incense to it. And if you didn't, they'd persecute you and throw you to the lions or something, or put you in the Coliseum and let the gladiators do something to you. But the rest of the time, they really didn't care. You could worship the dirt, dirt if you wanted to. They didn't care. Just as long as you acknowledged their God or whatever, whenever they told you what day of the month or whatever to do it, on Sunday or on Saturnalia or sometime, then you just burn your incense, and I guess you had to set it outside your door or something, and have it burning. I'm not sure. I wouldn't really know too much about how they'd done that, but I would say it was probably something like that. It had to be obvious you were doing it. If they come by your place and didn't see the incense out there burning, come in there, hey, why ain't you got your incense out? Today's Saturnalia, or it's the day of the sun. And but, worship Yahuwah Elohim. Don't worship nothing else. Because if you do, it's idolatry. And Yes, our Messiah is to be honored. Because the Father honored him because he was faithful and he was obedient, and that's what he wants from us. He wants us to be faithful and obedient, and it says here in chapter 5. And at chapter 5, verse 18, let me back up here a little bit. This is where he had healed a person. And he said, "Behold, thou art made whole, sin no more, lest a worse thing come unto thee." The man departed and told the Jews that it was Yahuwah which had made him whole. And therefore did the Jews persecute Yahuwah and sought to slay him because he had done these things on the Sabbath day. But Yahuwah answered them, "My Father worketh hitherto, and I work." Therefore the Jews sought the more to kill him, because he not only had broken the Sabbath, but said also that Elohim was his Father, making himself equal with Elohim. And he is. He is a part of Elohim. But the Father is the head. He says, the Father is the head of me, of Christ. And Christ is the head of man. And man is the head of the woman. This is the hierarchy. That's the way it is. Then answered Yahuwah and said unto them, "Verily, verily, I say unto you, the Son can do nothing of himself but what he seeth the Father do. For what those things soever he doeth, these also doeth the Son likewise. For the Father loveth the Son, and showeth him all things that himself doeth. And he will show him greater works than these, that ye may marvel. For as the Father raiseth up the dead, and quickeneth them, even so the Son quickeneth whom he will. For the Father judgeth no man, but hath committed all judgment unto the Son, that all men should honor the Son, even as they honor the Father. He that honoreth not the Son honoreth not the Father, which hath sent him." So he is entitled to honor. I mean, it's just like if a prince of a king, is pretty much equal with his father. I mean, in that he is going to be king someday. But if you dishonor the king's son, you're jeopardizing being beheaded. So you honor the son the way that you would honor the father. It says that all men should honor the Son even as they honor the Father. He that honoreth not the Son honoreth not the Father which hath sent him. Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that heareth my word and believeth on him that sent me, believeth on him that sent the Messiah, hath everlasting life. Notice what he's saying here. He that heareth my word and believeth on him that sent me hath everlasting life. Okay, it's like I said a while ago. It's not just a matter of belief. It's a matter about hearing and doing. And shall not come into condemnation, but is passed from death unto life. And it says, "Verily, verily, I say unto you, the hour is coming, and now is, when the dead shall hear the voice of the Son of Elohim, and they that hear shall live. For as the Father hath life in himself, so hath he given to the Son to have life in himself." And I think it's in one of the epistles, I can't remember which one, but it says, "He also has become our Elohim." our God. So we honor him the same way that we honor the Father, and if we don't, we dishonor the Father, because the Father endowed honor on the Son. And but we worship the Father, and so we don't want to, to do anything that is going to be contrary to what our scriptures tells us and what Messiah taught us. And he taught us to worship the Father. Worship Elohim. Yahuwah Elohim. That's what he told Satan. And so that's what we need to do. And so I just thought that would be an interesting subject to kind of talk about, and to bring a few scriptures there to kind of show that, so that we don't begin to worship the Messiah rather than worshiping the Father. And because that's what man's been guilty of all along, is they have not worshiped Yahuwah Elohim, but they just put something else up there all the time. And that's why he sent Messiah to reveal the Father to us, and to reveal his name, because they had forgotten his name. If you look in Jeremiah chapter 23, matter of fact, I'll read this. I talk about it sometimes, but it's Jeremiah chapter 23, I believe it's 25, verse 25 through 27. It says, I have heard what the prophets said. This is Jeremiah chapter 23, verses 25, starting at 25. I have heard what the prophets said, that prophesied lies in my name, saying, I have dreamed, I have dreamed. How long shall this be in the heart of the prophets that prophesy lies? Yea, they are prophets of the deceit of their own heart, which think to cause my people to forget my name by their dreams, which they tell every man to his neighbor, as their fathers have forgotten my name for Baal. And if you look at Baal, the word Baal is Lord. So everywhere in the Old Testament where you see the word capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D, used to be the Tetragrammaton, YHWH. And they took it out and replaced it with Lord. So now in the King James, I believe at the beginning there, it usually tells you that they did that, and that it was, Yod-Heh, Vav-Heh, Wah-Heh, but they're acknowledging that they just using it, which, and also the word Lord means master, which is what Baal means. Baal means master. And then when it's capital L with lowercase O-R-D, it means Adon or Adonai, or master. But the idea is here, though, is that the Hebrew priesthood, the Levitical priesthood, they changed it to, they called it the ineffable name doctrine, and to where you could not pronounce his name other than if you were reading from the Torah or if you were in the temple. Outside of there, you were not allowed to speak his name. And they said it was because they were trying, they were in fear of blaspheming his name or taking his name in vain. But that was just an excuse. And so by the time that the Messiah came, people had forgotten his name. And by then, it was a capital offense. If you spoke his name outside of reading the Torah or outside of the temple, it was a capital offense, and they would put you to death. They'd stone you to death or whatever. And that's why they kept seeking to stone Christ and to kill him, and he eluded them, was because he was speaking the Father's name. They hated it. But he revealed it to Moses, because he told Moses, says, your fathers have not known my name. They knew him as El or Elohim or El Elyon, but they never knew his real name, which is Yahuwah. They never knew it. And so that's who we're supposed to worship. Yahuwah Elohim, and him only. And so just thought that was something that kind of just stayed with me, and I thought I'd bring that out, and hopefully you like I say, we're supposed to honor Mashiach, Yahushua, but we're not supposed to worship him. We worship Yahuwah Elohim and him only. And Christ taught us that. That's what he was teaching. And he taught us, revealed his name to his disciples and revealed the truth about, worship him. Those who worship him must worship him in spirit and truth. And we can worship him anywhere. It doesn't matter. We don't have to be in Jerusalem to worship him, because this has become the temple. And that's what he was telling that woman there at the well, the Samaritan woman. You worship what you know not. Well, he came to reveal what we're supposed to, who we're supposed to worship and how we're supposed to worship and how we're supposed to be obedient to him. And so with that, I'm going to end it there. As always, don't, be good Bereans. Don't take what, believe what I say. Hear what I got to say. But you do your own homework. You study the scriptures to see whether what I'm telling you is true or not. Pray about it. Pray over it and ask the Father to reveal it to you. Is this true? Is this what he's saying true? And let the scriptures bear it out. And, 2:15, 2 Timothy 2:15, study to make thyself approved workman unto Elohim, who need not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. I love you folks. I pray for you. I hope all of you will be blessed. And like I said, I'm not going to let the God of this world discourage me and drive me away from bringing these studies. I know that's what he's trying to do. He wants to discourage us. He wants to, and of course, entities like YouTube and other tech platforms they're instruments of his. Of course, he always, captures everything, even if initially it wasn't. In the end, he'll capture them, and they become his instruments. And anybody that wants to try to bring truth, he's going to suppress it. And it's not just me. I know I watch a lot of other people that they suppress. They don't send notifications out to people. They turn off people's subscriptions. They do all, the AI. I don't think it's actual individuals. I think that these individuals put parameters in there, and then the AI follows it. their terms of service or whatever, and you know, and I've appealed their stuff and all that, and I mean the like that I get a response back. Your appeal has been denied. Yeah, and it's funny. I mean, it is. You know, it would be funny if it wasn't so sad that, you know, because you know good and well no humans had that much time to review your appeal, and then you got to take their indoctrination stuff if you want to keep from having your channel shut down. They want you to go and read and answer all these questions and stuff. You know, of course, I went in there and read them and, you know, checked off the box or whatever, just you know, to get it, keep them from shutting me down on there. But it's like it's like you got to read and take like a little test. You know, they give you a scenario and you answer what the outcome of that scenario should be regarding their terms of service or something, you know. So I went on there and answered it, you know. And, I guess it would have kept them from shutting me down or whatever, but just goofy stuff like that. I mean, they don't quit, you know. And that AI never rests. It just goes on and on doing its stuff. And when you try to appeal or something, ain't nobody looking at it. It's just AI saying, nope, you're not gonna. It's like Dr. Steve Turley. They demonetized him for something, some video that they didn't like or whatever that he put out, and suspended his demonetization for so many days or whatever, like 90 days or 6 months or something. And at the end of it, then they come out with something else saying, well, we're not going to remonetize you because you put out harmful content. So he's still demonetized, you know, and yet they're running commercials on his channel, making money off of it, and he's not getting anything out of it. You know, I've thought about it. If you get enough people to get on board with it, to launch a class action suit against them, you know, get somebody like the Institute for Justice or something to represent it, because they're sharp. The Institute for Justice, they're a really sharp bunch there, and they really do care about helping people that have been wronged by the law and by the state or by entities, you know, like YouTube or somebody. But it's going to take a large effort and a large group of people to really get behind it. You know, but they've gotten people so afraid and so brainwashed, you know, and the people that they do monetize and they're making a lot of money on it, they're not going to do anything to rock the boat. So getting anything really done against these people is going to be hard. But I'm going to keep plugging away at it anyway. And with that, I hope you all will be blessed. I love you. And I'll see you again on the next Shabbat if Yahuwah is willing.